Professor Dr. Azlina Muhammad Kosnin is professor at the School of Education, Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities, University Technology Malaysia. Her areas of expertise are educational psychology and child development. She joined the university in 1994 and has various administrative experiences from psychology, postgraduate academic manager, chair of School of Education, and academic and student affairs deputy dean at FSSH.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning to everyone in WebEx as well and in Facebook Live. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin, wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Okay, inshallah, today we are going to delve into this matter. I think this is a very critical and very important part of academic writing, which is on critical writing. So being critical in academic writing, it requires a few things. It requires critical and analytical thinking. That's the things that I've mentioned just now. Okay, developing critical writing skills involve reading, note-taking, reflecting, researching, and writing. So this is the process. Before you are able to write, you have to read a lot. When you're reading, it's not a matter of reading like a newspaper reading. You have to really understand, dissect the material that you are reading, and take a clear position and support your arguments through evidence or support, and then develop your academic voice in your subject area. That's the process of being critical in academic writing. Right, if you look at this picture, I took it from the internet, it's from Open University. It's a cycle, whether you are writing for academic essays or writing for a thesis, a dissertation, and so on. The starting point is to identify, this is like a small scale one, yeah? Identify assumptions, then check for its validity, consider alternative perspectives, and then you take informed decisions based on take informed actions. Meaning that when you're reading a material, the first thing that you do is think about it and check its validity, and also look at other perspectives of what the same idea is about. Okay, how others have been looking at it, and then you make your decision. How do you see the different perspectives? That's where you put in your voice. Okay, in the process of critical and analytical thinking, there's a lot of problems, or can say that there's a lot of barriers to think critically and analytically. Okay, let's see what are the barriers to think critically and analytically. Okay, the common pitfalls, let's start from the right here. Misunderstanding. This is because you did not really understand because of the context of the reading text, or because unconscious bias, okay? Maybe due to language or cultural differences. When you read a text, maybe the person who's writing the material is saying something else, but you understood it differently because of cultural differences, maybe, or because of the lack of language proficiency. There's a lot of reasons why misunderstandings can happen. A lack of awareness of the processes involved, or a misunderstanding that critical thinking means making negative comments alone, or just making negative comments. You look at things or you just criticize it. It's the misunderstanding because of that kind of thinking. The second one is reluctance to critique. Sometimes when we read academic texts, especially the ones that have been published in renowned journals, great journals, international reputed index, WOS, and so on, we tend to take things for granted, like, okay, this is the truth. These are facts. These are the things that we just accept because it has gone through rigorous process and so on, but not necessarily. Okay, you still have to look carefully into the research. Even though, yes, the index, WOS and so on, is an indicator that it is a good work, it has been recognized through various vigorous process, but still you have to be cautious about just accepting things. Maybe that not because of technical aspects, but can also be due to its relevance to the context of our culture, for example. Critical writing is there as well. You need to blend them together in a in a clear manner that makes it easier for the readers to follow your thinking and to be convinced about what you're saying, okay, or be clear about your ideas, your voice. You can see your voice. Okay, writing the introduction chapter. This is perhaps the most challenging chapter, as I said, in a thesis, as this chapter positions your research. Okay, in order to position yourself, you have to be clear what you want to do and why. Like I said, as a lawyer, you are trying to justify the case, whether there is a case or not. If people are convinced, okay, this is important and there is a clear gap, those are the things that examiners especially are looking when they are reading your chapter 1. Okay, to arrive at this stage, you must have an ample grasp of the issue. Only then you can start writing this chapter. Don't rush into writing. You need to understand the context, the evidence, the reading materials. Obviously, while you are reading, you will be taking notes, right? What I did later, in my old days, was so long ago as a novice writer. What I did was that when I read interesting facts, I would copy and paste them and put into designated parts in designated chapters. For example, when I'm reading, oh, this would be good for my background, or this would be good for my methodology, this would be good for this. So I'll just copy and paste with the reference. But obviously, you don't simply put them together like a jigsaw. You need to go through okay, after you've done that for a while, you have enough materials. You read through the points and then you can like arrange the points to make them in a better flow and in a more clearer storyline with the facts, obviously with the points that you want to make them within certain points you put together. Okay, only that, oh, okay, these are the points, and then you can rewrite, rephrase, and write using your own way of writing. Okay, you don't simply cut and paste and put them together. That's a very common thing that students do. And we can see that in the writing as examiners, because we can't understand what is that you're talking. Okay, from this point you say this, and then you say this, and then you say this, because the ideas are not aligned, because you simply cut and paste and then you paraphrase and maybe, okay, but you don't align them with your thoughts. That's the biggest mistake I think that students are doing when they're writing. Comment, which is very common, is not critical. You don't critically discuss the previous works. And then the literature review, not related to research objectives. You simply explain, the structure is very important. Why you need to structure the previous research based on the research objectives is to help you to discuss later on in the discussion chapter. If you have put together nicely, okay, the research objectives, the literature review, the previous research based on the research objectives, it would be easier for you to compare and contrast your findings to their work, okay, in the discussion chapter. So you won't have to read through the whole chapter 2 to try to identify which ones are relevant for which results. Yeah. Okay, chapter methodology chapter. This is the part where you can be more descriptive, because you are trying to explain the technical aspects, but you still have to write critically in the justifications part why you use that despite or be, other rather than other techniques. Okay. So research methodology is the more technical part. It refers to the overarching strategy or plan that outlines how research will be conducted. Okay, and often this is what a common, I'm not saying mistake, a common practice how students approach their research is to just look at another, because it can be a good thing to look for another thesis or other works that have been doing similar research like yours and how they do it in the methodology. You just follow them, but you need to understand what you're doing. That's the most important thing. So for everyone here, if you're doing research, okay, get a very good book on research methodology. You can ask your supervisor what is a good book for research method. Get hold of it, try to understand and really digest what the book is about. Because even though you are not going to be using the other research methods in the book, but if you plan to become an academician, okay, you plan to do more research after this, you become an academician, you need to know the research methodology in general. Even though you're doing qualitative research, you need to know as well about quantitative and the vice versa, because you might end up doing more research which is not the same as what you're doing now when when you're studying, or you would be examining or supervising students who are using some different approaches. You cannot just say that, oh, I'm this yours. You can say it, but depends on the way the place that you're working. Or I don't supervise students who are doing this. I cannot supervise you. But it's a good thing that if you can learn other methods as well, so that you would be able to at least understand what others are doing in their research and understand their findings, whether their findings are sound or not, especially for your literature review. Because the issue that you are approaching or you are doing is not simply done through the method that you're using in your work. Others might be using different methods or different methodology. So you might want to critically discuss that aspect as well. Okay. The research problem would be the one that decides on the research methodology that you should be using. If you're approaching it in a very positivist approach, things work like this in the world, that is obviously a quantitative research. Okay, you are trying to argue that things are like this, and you're trying to argue, or you're trying to find proof of it. You want to prove it through your research. So that is a positivist approach, and you're using quantitative research. But if you are new, like the issue is something that people have not done so much about that issue, and you are in the phase of trying to explore, so that's obviously a qualitative research. Okay, so the way you argue in chapter 1 should match the approach that you're using in chapter 3. Okay, it shouldn't be like, oh, you're trying to argue that things work like this, but then you are using qualitative research. No. Okay, they all should align. Okay, all parts in the methodology must be explained and justified. You're using this and this, why? Okay. Additional chapters normally added, like I've said just now. If you're having a module, then you might want to have another chapter for the methodology. Okay, there might be other common comments as well, but these are the ones that I can remember. Okay, or can relate or highlight as the ones that are most common comments for chapter 3. Okay, alignment of the research method with the research objective doesn't align with the perspective that you are using. Okay, justifications for the approach not given while you're using this, not that, right? And inaccurate research usage of research design. You are saying that you're using this, but then you're not using it actually. You're using another thing, or you're not really strictly following what the approach or design or technique that you are declaring. That's why you need to have a very good grasp of research methodology. Okay, questions? Maybe we can stop for questions first before we
Yes,
go
Prof. We
further.
have a question from Rose. What is the difference between variables and research gaps?
Variables are the constructs, gaps are what is lacking. For example, we go back to your issue just now about primary school on online learning. Okay, the gap is when you, it, for example, there are studies on primary school students. Okay, but you are arguing that primary school students have different nature in learning. And if we go to another level, preschool level, they are even different. They are um, they are having short span in terms of the time that they can focus. Okay, they have nature of they tend to learn better through play, for example. Okay, but then those things have not been looked into in this area of online learning. I'm just saying this an example. I'm sure there have been plenty of work that has been looking into that area. Okay, but then you can use those elements as the gaps that you see. These are important, but they have not been looked into. Whereas the variables are the identified constructs that you want to explore further. Okay, example of variables. Factors in quantitative research, for example, what are the determinants of academic achievement amongst university students? For example, maybe you want to look at their IQ, you want to look at their study behavior. Okay, those are the variables.